And with that, we're live.
Greetings from Capital Cigar and Tobacco. This is Tony, and I'm going to walk you up to Reinhard and George as they start their live stream. So if you'll allow me, I'm going to give you a quick tour of our lounge. As we follow into the main seating area. A brief detour to show off the humidor.
Hello.
And now to present you with the stars of our show, I give you Reinhard and George. Gentlemen, I will let you take it from here.
Thanks very much, Tony. Appreciate it.
Welcome, everybody. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you're joining us from. Light 'em Up Lounge live on location here at Capital Cigar and Tobacco in Bethesda, Maryland. What a pleasure. It's good to be back. We had sort of an unusual pause over the last 2 weeks because I had all sorts of family and health related things going on. I heard, and I'm very glad that you guys took over, stepped in, and that our treasured family, friends, and the whole Light 'em Up community stepped in and kept the show rolling. And it's just wonderful to be back and to see you guys, and in particular to sit here with my mentor and my very good friend
George Brightman,
himself. And as I said, we're at Capital Cigar and Tobacco in Bethesda. We just had a little walk around through the lounge and the fabulous and eclectic humidor. What we want today is not only give you a little impression of this beautiful scenery and setup here, but George and I, we want to discuss a little bit of what's going on in the industry. And we want to also share with you a cigar blind tasting experience, because Tony, who just gave you the tour of Capital Cigar and Tobacco, has prepared 2 cigars for us.
Picked out some beautiful smokes. Suspiciously attractive, but clearly not Cameroon.
And
so he took it away from us. It's not exactly. We're not smoking a cigar with Marifel tobacco.
fair enough. The interesting thing is, well, first of all, we love to do blind tastings,
Yeah.
and George and I, we had plenty of them, both in person and via Zoom,
And exactly.
as we regularly do, with George sitting on this balcony and me sitting in Vienna. So
Yeah.
all across the big pond, we're doing our tasting sessions. But we wanted to share that with you. And one thing that I wanted to say and I wanted to share is that, unlike normally, I won't be following all the Facebook live streams because we're here and we have a slightly different and more remote setup. But please, everybody joining us via the Facebook live stream, get involved, send your questions, make yourselves heard. And in particularly for all of you guys here joining us at the Light 'em Up Lounge, unmute yourselves, chime in. Please share your questions and your thoughts with us, whilst George and I will go through the blind tasting. And
The whole afternoon is as much about hearing from them as it is from us.
absolutely. And I would say let's fire this.
Hey, George, is that Mike Copperman's old shop?
Say again, Andy.
Is that Mike Copperman's old store? It used to
Yes,
be
it is.
Bethesda. I thought I recognized it, and that is the last place I saw you.
Yeah.
And we were at Lito Gomez's birthday party. And I've got a picture of you and Copperman holding the birthday cake for Lito that looked like the Salomonis box.
Exactly right. Precisely the Salomon box.
Now I look a little different. I'm a lot older. It's been 20 years.
No older than us. We're equally weathered, I think. So, but you're right. That was an epic day. We're looking forward to celebrating something similar. This is actually the 30th anniversary, just as it is the 30th anniversary for La Flor Dominicana. It's the 30th for this shop in its various iterations. So, it began life as JB Sims briefly, then it became Bethesda Tobacco under Mike Conlon, and then Mike moved it here from the little house on Del Rey
I remember.
here to this beautiful custom-built space. Then it became a W. Curtis Draper as Mike moved into his new career as legislative on the political side of the cigar world. And here, I didn't mean to keep that from you.
I already used my trusted fingernail.
And then when the Drapers approach had sort of run its course, an old friend of Mike's bought the shop and has really restored it to the vision that he originally had. This is, for those of you who have the ability, either by your travels or any other way, get to know Capital Cigar and Tobacco, because this is a wonderful shop. It's a palace. It's beautiful. It's engineered so that the environment is great. You don't have to go home smelling like an ashtray. But the collection of cigars that are here are expertly curated, and of course capped off by Marifel and a complete dedication. In fact, that's really the reason why Reinhard is here. We got him to come tomorrow. Tomorrow night we're hosting a tasting, which I'm really excited to do. We're actually going to conduct a comparison between a Meyer blend Marifel and the new Ernst blend in the same size cigar. So comparison, and we're really thrilled about that. So, and by the way, can we say this? Is it our friend Jay Carragay, who's a coffee roaster, but also a real cigar fanatic. Jay has a podcast called Ono Live Coffee and Cigars, which is on Facebook and on YouTube typically. And he'll be here for the tasting tomorrow. So his podcast will essentially feature the Reinhard and George show. Okay, I've said enough. I'm leaning back now. Returning the show to its proper.
Oh, come on.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get into that, but I saw George and I saw the window. I remember sitting in that seat.
Yes, sitting in the window box. You're right.
Yes.
Absolutely. Good eye.
Well, just to sort of continue with the shameless plugs, for anybody and everybody in the area tomorrow, obviously, please come and join us 6:30 here at Capital.
Yes.
We'd be more than happy to have you and welcome you and share a cigar with you. Speaking of sharing a cigar, we have these beauties here. It feels like a typical 5x50 Robusto, maybe a
48.
maybe a touch
Small.
thinner
Touch small.
than a traditional Robusto, but sort of in that wheelhouse. There's not many visual clues. I mean, I'll George, maybe you can talk about that whilst I'm holding my cigar into the camera for people to examine.
It's a glorious color wrapper that you would think on first examination is a shade wrapper, but it's actually closer to sort of a rosado red. I don't know whether that's coming up on the camera. Oh, look at that. Is that there's an elegant fellow chiming in.
Edward, what a pleasure and honor.
Oh, the pleasure
wow.
is
Eddie joined it.
Oh, look at that. All the way from London.
I'm very sorry, all. I'm going to have to leave soon, but I couldn't give up this opportunity to say a quick hello to my very, very dear old friend, George. I'm so happy to see you in good health and you're there. I only wish that I was there with you all enjoying a nice cigar, but I will do that sometime in the course of this year. I promise that.
We'll light fireworks and hire the Klieg lights if we actually get a vacation. But in truth, also, we need to engineer doing a light 'em up lounge live show from St. James and German. We should do a show with you together. We should come over and be there. the three of
That
us.
will be such a great honor for me and for Eddie, for both of us, to welcome you all there. It will be fantastic. Reinhard, please, let's work on that one.
Yes,
You have my
let's-
word, Edward.
let's make it
with
happen.
great pleasure. But what a treat, what a joy to see you, Edward, in good health and impeccably
Thank you.
dressed and elegant as always. It's a privilege to have you with us. And please send our sincerest regards to Eddie and to your entire team in London. I can't wait to be
And-
with you guys again.
And your marvelous bride.
My marvelous bride is right here. I said I have to take time off to say hello to George, but here you are. I'm sorry to do this. It's not usual, but here you are, George.
Oh, lovely.
Hello, how
Good.
are you?
Wonderful. Great to see you. We were
Lovely
just
to see you
deciding-
as well.
We're trying to announce something so we can wish it into reality. We want to have Reinhard and I come to London so we can do one of these live with you and Edward and Eddie.
Wonderful, it will be wonderful.
We will all be waiting for you to do that. I promise.
I'm excited by the idea. It's been really, really wonderful to see.
Very
Edward,
well.
just so you know, yesterday we were with Gary Pesh, and one of the things that he was most excited to talk about and discuss was a transformative experience for him with you and Desmond.
Oh, would love to do that. You know, Desmond is no longer with us, but in spirit, he will always be with us.
He guides us all, but Gary was very fondly, Gary Pesh was regaling us with stories of a moment with you and Desmond that changed his perception about the cigar world.
Oh, I'm so happy. Give him my best regards. Lots of love to you all. I know you have a show to run. I feel embarrassed by breaking in like this, but all my love to you, to both of you, and to everybody else watching this lovely program. Have a wonderful evening, my dear friends and cigar lovers.
Great pleasure to see you and
Thank
hear you, Edward. All the best. Thanks for taking the time.
Bye.
Lots of love, Edward. Many, many thanks. for
Thank you, Reinhard. Thank you so
Goodbye.
much. Bye-bye.
Well, what a treat. What a lovely surprise. Coming back to our blind evaluation here, we spoke about the Vitola, but apart from that, there's not that many visual clues. I mean, the wrapper has a little bit of oil and a nice sheen. It has a little bit of grip. It has a little bit of texture,
Well,
but not overly so.
yeah, it's actually a pretty wrapper in the sense that it does have some oil, but it doesn't have a lot of grain, so it's not and it has zero tooth. You know, it's not like any Sumatra seed that you might find. It's actually it's a beautiful cigar. A little bit. You know, I mean. Professional evaluators from some other cigar media might say that it's a little bit uneven in its coloration, and it's a little bit veiny, and it's but honestly it's a beautiful cigar, and it looks very well made, although it actually feels a little light. You know, in other words, sometimes you pick up a cigar and it has natural heft and you go, whoa, I know we're in for a big ride here. This is one of those cigars that's like, it's a little on the light side.
Lights
And,
better.
and it's, and by the way, consistent with that, it had a very light, easy, cold draw. It wasn't prominent. It wasn't spicy. It wasn't forward. It was very, I keep wanting to say quiet or reserved, but that's not really it. It's subdued. It was not you know, a lot of times you pick up a cigar and you might be excited, you cut it and you're ready to sleep, and you go, whoa, wow, it explodes on your palate and it teases you about all these things that are coming. I think this is a cigar that's like it's going to unfold itself slowly.
Gentle, subdued is a good word, as you said. Had a little bit of a grassy note on the cold draw. It's like woodiness.
Well, what I was gonna say is that I thought it had herbal qualities. That to me, and not, I always distinguish between herbal and floral, because I think they go in two different directions, but as a general rule, when people say grassy, in my experience, when you say grassy in describing a cigar, most people have a tendency to interpret that as pejorative. In other words,
With a negative
grassy,
connotation.
it's sort of, maybe it's a backhanded compliment or a description that's a little bit off-putting for a lot of people. I will say this, it was, God, it's 30 plus years ago, but I was describing a cigar to somebody and they were like, wait a minute, I don't really know. And I said, we're talking about a classic cigar. What I was trying to do was teach somebody about a Romeo and Julieta Churchill, a Cuban, a real Cuban Churchill. And I said, just think about, it has a grassy center note, right? And everybody looked and said, well, that's what that is, right? And I was like, okay, so now I've corrupted your thinking about it by saying it myself. That's the way people are going to talk. And the problem is that a lot of people went, oh, okay, so because it was associated with the Romeo Churchill, they're like, that was a good thing. But then it migrated to the point where people are like, oh, grassy, like there's something wrong with that.
Green on
Well,
right.
yeah, because the problem is when you say grassy, a lot of times the first thing people think is that ammoniac quality from improperly fermented tobacco.
Very true. Now, for me, that distinction between grassy, floral,
And
where you have more of that blossoming, gentle, flowery quality, and then the herbal side, what I usually refer to as sort of a mountain hay, where you have more of these alpine herbs mixed in.
fresh
with the
cut
blood.
wild grass.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that, because those are essentially, I think of them as spring-like. They're the opposite of the forest floor, walking on crushed leaves and dirt and stuff like that. But I will say this now, because we're arrived at that, this cigar is not fresh cut mountain grass. There is no that sort of herbal grassy, that's not the element that we've got going here.
And we'll just get to cruising speed with our
Yeah.
cigars, as you always say. In the meantime, I was curious to hear a little bit about your antennas and your perception as to where we're at right now, end of February 2024. It's less than a month to the trade show in Vegas. It's been, in my humble opinion, a relatively calm start of the year when it comes to the business side and sales, when talking to all the various retailers and importers, both internationally and in the US. However, very busy, of course, as this is prime season for all the festivals. Last week, the guys were discussing the various festivals internationally, and Ian gave us a bit of inside baseball on the Nicaraguan Puro Sabor Festival. A lot of folks are currently in Cuba for the Festival de Habanos. But what's your thoughts on the current state of the industry? Do you think we're in a healthy place at the moment? And how do you think things will progress leading up to the trade show late March?
Well, first of all, normally the first quarter of the year for a lot of retailers, and not just in the United States, around the world, the first quarter of the year is challenging. Now, if you live in a real southern climate where everybody's showing up, in other words, Florida goes, what are you guys talking about? January and February are our best months, Florida and Georgia, places like that where you can escape the winter blues, but they're sort of in contrast to the typical. I think it's human nature that after people get through the holidays and, come the beginning of January, weather is not so good, but people are opening their mail and looking at their bills and everything else, and they're going, oh, I gotta behave myself for a little while, and there's this I won't say it's unconscious, but I'm not sure that it's really actually deliberate. But everybody sort of hunkers down and says, we got to make it through winter, right? And it's natural that that translates into quiet days at a cigar shop or a cigar lounge. And we're, you know, we're basically everybody's used to that, in my opinion. But let's be realistic. In terms of an elevated view with a longer term perspective, these are extraordinary times for cigar makers and cigar consumers alike. It's a golden age. There's never been more great cigars available from a variety of people and a variety of destinations, all of which happens to be very, very good. That it's in market now as Cuba weathers whatever their political and environmental and economic crises, you know, pick your flavor of the week in terms of their failure, but they're receding in the international market in terms of their ability to fulfill and therefore maybe potentially to even dominate. You know, there are all kinds of excellent cigar makers from different corners of the cigar world that are clearly proving that they belong on the same stage, if not a step up. And so for consumers, that's spectacular. And let's not forget that thanks to the PCA and the CRA, we have won some legislative victories for the first time in years that we've pushed back on some of the intent to restrict. Now, is that permanent? Is it ongoing? Is it a final victory? Obviously not. Because the truth is, sorry, you'll excuse the phrase, but the health Nazis are never going to give up trying to drive us out of business. You know, they're never going to say, oh yeah, cigars, they're no big deal. Let them have their fun. It's the exact opposite. It's like those people are enjoying themselves. That has to stop. Right. So with that battle is ongoing. But in terms of short term, right now, I think that the difference, you know, having finished a trade show at the end of last summer, where there was a substantial amount of new projects and things going forward that were, you know, had aggressive timelines in terms of delivering, trying to meet those by the end of the year, and then get ready in a less than 90-day, less than 1 quarter cycle to do it all over again is very challenging. So this one gap, this one time where there's basically 6 or 7 months between these trade shows, and they have to release something new, describe the exciting things that they're going to do, get their retail partners to commit to that. That's a big challenge. And I think that what's interesting about it will be that it will set the stage for a new pattern, which is that manufacturers will get together with their retail partners and tell a story early in the year and say, here's how the rest of the year is going to look. We're going to ship this in summertime. We're going to ship that in fall. And this is finally going to arrive for the holidays. And that's wonderful. That's a great thing for all of us to look forward to. Whether everybody can meet those schedules remains. I still think that in the cigar world in general, we're facing environmental issues which could affect tobacco yield. We're facing political issues in various countries that could affect labor and production and export. This business is never without risks, but obviously all of us that love cigars and the cigar business are contrarians to begin with. So the more people tell us, oh my God, the end of the world is coming and things are bad, we're sitting there saying, you're exactly right. That's absolutely what's going to happen. There's no question. So the best thing we can all do is light up a cigar.
Amen to that. And just to add a little bit to that, as you perfectly said, with the adjustments of the timing of the trade show for this year, 2024 is probably the most challenging year for the manufacturers that they will have, because they will only have this short time span now to get ready for the trade show. And Charlie Minato wrote a very interesting analysis after the TPE trade show. And he said that it seems like most of the retailers probably lost one sales cycle. He was describing the sales cycle in which the industry and many other industries usually work. And I think it just, in a challenging way, coincides with winter nearing its tail end, the trade show being earlier in the year, and usually the start of the year being a slower period in terms of sales. Whereas normally when the trade show was in July, people would probably not shy away from stocking up their inventory because they were entering the busiest season of the year, where in summer, most of the
Spring and
retailers,
summer,
spring and
everybody
summer,
benefits from customers being, I'm playing more golf or I'm going fishing or that whatever they're, and I can just sit in my backyard and not have to worry about it. I don't have to be indoors. Yes, that's all of that is true. But in a sense, just having a compressed cycle one time is significantly better than continuing to allow the trade show to be at an inopportune time of the year. Let's not forget, there are many of you who may or may not look at celebrity.
of course I do. Good to see you.
So good to see you.
So
There aren't too many people in the world that I call a perfect gentleman. You're it.
sorry, brief interruption for a giant to walk through. But what I was saying is that the traditional reason for the trade show being in either late July or August was because that was the only time of year you could get a cheap rate on New York City hotels. Because for the first 50 years of the trade show's existence, it was always in New York City. There was no question that it was ever going to be anywhere else because that was the center of the industry. Everything happened there. And the people who were the movers and shakers, the ones who drove the business, were all in New York and New Jersey. That's it. And everybody else had to come to them. You went to Mecca once a year. And that was the time when, because in those days, the trade show was then called the RTDA. They were worried that these guys wouldn't make the trip because it was too expensive to go to New York and be in a hotel room. So they picked a time, and that just stuck. In other words, once the boom of the 90s started, it was like, well, the trade show's at the end of summer. You got to be ready for that because that's what's you go to the trade show, you make your deals, and that's how you plan the end of the third and fourth quarter. It was how your whole year was calendarized, but it's really impractical in terms of planning, having good sense about planning your business year. You want to be like, let's figure it out in January and February. We'll shake hands and make deals and write orders in March, and off we go for the rest of the year.
And eventually the same was true for Las Vegas, because for all the people who have ever sweated through July in Las Vegas, that is also a time of the year where you could probably get decent
Where you can
rates
get bargain
for
rates.
a convention center
Yeah.
to host a trade show.
Yeah. And they're please come out and join us. It's the worst time of year to be in Las Vegas. And by the way, it's also the worst time of year for your cigars to spend any time in transit, in trucks or airplanes. It's true misery. And then we're going to put them into a trade show environment where everything about the natural ambiance is the opposite of what cigars need to thrive and prosper and be presented in their best light. So, I mean, I personally, I'm looking forward to being back in New Orleans next year because that's for so many different reasons, a great place to be, a great time of year to be there, and exciting. So, but look, there are many reasons why Vegas became an attractive destination for the show, not the least of which was that there were a lot of people in Vegas who were eager to host us and be, sites for the different things that we wanted to do. Now it's a little bit more restricted, in other words, the opportunities are not endless, but it doesn't change the fact that Vegas is a welcoming environment for people who want to go out, smoke and drink and stay up at night, which is
George, what are they going to do about the no smoking in New Orleans? So by going back there, because in 2015, when we were there the last time, we had an issue about they had made it a non-smoking town, and the only place you could go was like Don Leoncion's or Smoke on the Water.
Yeah, there are a couple of accommodations that have been made. You are right about that. By the way, that was an unfortunate, that return to New Orleans was right after they had tightened this And I don't think that the powers that be in New Orleans had figured out how they were going to evade the law successfully. But there are a number of places and a number of ways that will dodge that, and people will be accommodated. I don't know enough about specific plans that have been laid about companies who want to entertain bigger groups. In other words, not just friends or groups of retailers wanting to go out and find a place to enjoy a cigar. But listen, New Orleans is a town that really embraces lawbreakers, so we're all going to be fine.
They've actually changed a bunch of it.
Yeah,
The-
they
the-
wound back. They wound back a number of restrictions.
The city council, actually a couple weeks before they made the announcement last year to move it, the New Orleans City Council passed a resolution that said that restaurants and businesses can apply for special convention licenses for the time period of the convention to get temporary licenses. So restaurants or bars could apply for the period of PCA for like a 5-day license in order to have a smoking license and therefore host events.
So that's,
Interesting.
again, like I said, they're good at figuring ways around the letter of the law. It's perfect.
Yeah.
We're not.
Well, it's just funny because I, like you, I've been around a little bit, but I remember when it was back in New York, everyone had a suite and we would go from suite to suite to suite.
Right. We'd be walking down the halls.
And then everybody started, when we started going convention centers, IPCPR especially, would switch from New Orleans to Orlando to Las Vegas and so on down the line. So they're going,
I'll go for a while.
yeah.
But of course, that was an integral part for the PCA to even make that decision to move to New Orleans. And before it was announced, that part had to be cleared up and somehow resolved. Otherwise, they wouldn't have made that decision.
Yeah. But think about it. First of all, it's a compromised destination. It's easy for people from all over the country to come to. The entertainment quality, it's a tremendous food town. Obviously, it's a tremendous town for music. And there are casinos there for people, maybe not Vegas level operations, but the people that want to make gambling part of their trade show experience are not going to have any trouble doing that in New Orleans. But overall, I would say that it's a great town for the vibe that we want to have around. Let's also be honest about one thing. The trade show has once again contracted a little bit from the boom years when everybody wanted to put up, the most elaborate displays they had, and everybody and his brother wanted to be there. And you had all of these companies that were striving for attention. So the actual trade show floor needed more room. And you had, just an explosion of new people and new energy every time you went to the show. Now it's a little bit different. And so our needs are a little bit different. And let's also say this, not that we don't have new blood, but the group of retailers who form the tip of the spear, the ones that are the dynamic guys and innovative right now, have a pretty fair amount of experience under their belt. They know how to work the trade show. They know how to manage their time. They know what's important to do in the days that they're there. That didn't used to be the case.
George, that leads me to one aspect that we discussed extensively yesterday with Gary Pash from Old Virginia. And the experience of the old schoolers, the icons that we have in this business, both on the manufacturing end, but also very importantly on the retail end, they're still there. And we currently live through a time in the industry where there's different generations all mixed together, where we still have the old schoolers, we still have the tradition, we have overlapping generation of true innovators. And yesterday we spoke about it on the manufacturing end. Lito Gomez, for example, being a prime example of that. I think Pete Johnson could also be named as a prime example. Very much based on the foundation and the fundamentals of the old and true and tested, the tradition, but very much looking ahead and trying to incorporate new ideas and innovation in order to take the industry further. And then we have the new generation that's innovating, but probably to a certain extent lacking the same appreciation for what's been there for the longest part. And as I said, I think that's the case for both the manufacturing side, but also for the retail community. And I firmly believe that we have a responsibility to bridge that and to make sure that we preserve the tradition and we take the inspiration and the ingenuity of generations in the past and intertwine that with innovative ideas and with everything that's going on digitally, with the present times that we live in, and carry the industry into a new era. And that is a challenge, but at the same time, a tremendous opportunity for the industry to evolve, to be healthy.
All very well said. I like yesterday you framed it very succinctly that there are these three generations with sort of in some instances clashing agendas. Let's be clear about one thing. There are always, let us hope that there will always be young people attracted to this business who will do whatever it takes to drag it kicking and screaming. We used to say, not that long ago, some of us who were considered young Turks, to get an idea how long ago it was, but we were going to drag the tobacco business kicking and screaming into the 20th century from the 19th century, just as we were about to enter the new millennium of the 21st century. So there's no question but that the foundations of this business are firmly rooted in people who understand and embrace tradition. But some of the biggest leaps forward that this business has taken in the 50 years that I've been involved in it. God, it's hard to believe that. But anyway, in the 50 years that I've been involved in it, young people have made tremendous leaps. They've changed the business by the way that they think about their place in it and making space for them. And of course, obviously, the boom of the 90s fostered room for a bunch of those people. And what's remarkable is that a number of them have matured into pillars of the industry right now. The problem is that because of the explosion of non-traditional cigar media, everybody has a megaphone, everybody thinks they have an audience, everybody thinks what they have to say is important. So I said this the other day that in general right now the internet is a fire hose of disinformation about our industry, and
Any industry for that matter.
Yes, yeah. I mean, and I'm not trying. Look, yes, I'm an old man screaming, "Get off my lawn!" But I don't mean to be. I'm not trying to say that it isn't useful. Listen, as far as I'm concerned, what we're doing right now is an example. We were exploring stuff like this before the pandemic came along. But if you think about how the industry pivoted to staying in touch, maintaining community, even reaching out to new people and bringing them into a community of passionate cigar fans, we should all be carving statues of whoever the hell invented Zoom and saying, this person was really, really good for our business. Now, if it ends up destroying the industry, obviously I'll have to eat those words. But for now, I think that the increased facility to communicate is an opportunity for folks like us to go and reach our elders who still have a tremendous amount to teach and share, but we are on the cusp of losing an entire generation of, and I don't mean, I'm not saying that they're all going to die tomorrow, but there are people who are going to pass out of public life, either because of age, infirmities, and maybe even just a desire to say, look, I'm laying down my sword. I'm not fighting anymore. I'm retiring from public view, that kind of thing. There's this reservoir of experience, and by the way, a generosity with that experience, which I was the beneficiary of. As I've told you many, many times, my life and my interest and my passion for this business, one of the people who ignited it and fanned it and encouraged it at a really young age was Heller Merrifield. I owe Heller a huge debt, and I will never forget it. And it's one of the reasons for my love for the family. But it's there is this group of people who are shifting out of that, and there are some people who are the new titans that respect their elders, the people who've gone before, who are extremely conscious of the lessons that they learned, how generous their ancestors in the business were in sharing hard-won knowledge. Listen, trust me, it used to be that, if you went to the trade show and you were asking people, retailers might talk to each other about, what's good and or what was succeeding in selling. Yeah, there you go. Look at that picture. Who the hell is it? Look at Carl, first of all. But Mike, I mean, that was a great moment, right?
That was a great party. And look how young you were.
Yeah. Please, are you kidding? But trust me, I was feeling old in that picture, and that's 20 years ago.
I sent you a copy of that, by the way, just now.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. That was a great moment. And listen, the thing is, cigars have blessed me my entire life. I have been more places, met more people, had more experiences than I ever would have under normal circumstances, all because of cigars and my love for them. Again, I've been blessed, my time with Benjamin Menendez, my time with Heller and Richard, his son. Richard was what a great human being. But all kinds of legends of my time with Don Carlos Fuente, with Jose Orlando Padron, with Guillermo's dad, with Don Fernando. Those are lessons that I will never forget. But and they were great at it. But what I was trying to say about in the old days and going to the trade show, if you were actually trying to find out information like even something as simple as, where physically is that factory and what materials are they using, they'd be like, get the hell out of here. It's like, that's none of your business, and now all of that stuff is flaunted, and it's a lot of trivia. Essentially, it's like, oh, look at this bright shiny object that's made at this factory and it has these components, none of which matters to the consumer because it doesn't tell them anything about what they're going to experience or what they should look forward to or whether or not it's something that they'll actually appreciate.
And what's so important about this, George, is that you perfectly described it with your experiences with Heller Merrifield and the other icons of the industry. Thankfully, you have taken on that challenge, and it's a blessing for me to get to spend time with you.
Yeah, but many people just go, that guy never shuts up.
But I wish that more people would even ask.
Please don't.
and be appreciative of all the experience and the knowledge that you have, and the whole industry should start building monuments for you, George, and your accomplishment, because I don't think many people understand or appreciate how you have been involved in the paradigm shifts of the industry and have pulled so many strings behind the scenes, and now you allow people like myself the privilege and the blessing to learn from your experience. And honestly, I wish that more people of the young generation would be appreciative of that and willing to listen. And that's, I guess, also a matter of the disinformation that you spoke about with the online.
But don't you
and
think
the
it's
digital
also
world.
generational? Here's the problem, I believe. We're at a stage where there's a group of people who feel like what they've just witnessed is a number of people become wealthy beyond anybody's imagination by being quote unquote disruptors and doing things different. And we're innovators and we're going to turn everything upside down. And so it gives them probably an unhealthy sense of disrespect for what has come before. It's like, no, I don't need to know any of that stuff. If I actually want to learn it, I'll look it up on the internet, which of course,
George, on that note, I think, I have perfect, example actually. So sorry to interrupt. When Germany is very known about their family businesses, large family businesses, multi-billion family businesses, and they started like a small factories, right? So there is a lot of it you can learn from the approach they had. And I remember, one company called Obo Betterment, the German manufacturer, now a multi-billion international company. And I had a luxury to speak with the owner. And I said, so how come that your sons and daughters, like family of 5, members, actually now all, within the company and in managing position? He said, oh, that's very simple, actually. I, made sure that they join the other industries, finish education in other industries, and then they come back and bring that, knowledge, inside. But he said that the second thing, the best thing I did, I actually went and hired McKinsey, consultants. I said, oh, hold on a minute. I don't get it. He's like, well, what they, told me, and I took some notes and I'm going to, share with you. So he basically told me that there are always, business stewardess, some old generation, the guardians of tradition, and you have to respect and they have to stay in a business as a board member or whatever. Then you need to have a transitional leader. So basically somebody else in between that gonna bridge the gap between those, business stewardess and then innovators. And then he said, what the problem is, we need, I need, my younger generation, my kids or my grandsons or my granddaughters joining the business, that they would be called, as, McKinsey put it, progressive navigators, forward-thinking integrators of adaptive, what's in the future. He said, what I don't want, what McKinsey, gave him was so-called freaking pioneers. Said, I don't want pioneers. They are too much of disruption. He said, so that's exactly what you said, that, it's very nice to see, the pioneers, but they're going to disrupt or ruin the business. They can completely shut down the business because they're going to abuse the law. They're going to abuse, something. They just, aiming too sharp for the future. You need to think about the past. So he said, as long as I'm having, myself as business dinosaur, but, also, as a business stewardess, and then I'm having, transitional leaders. So that's my sons and my daughters on the board. And then I have maybe some external people who are those progressive navigators who brings, even more, ideas from other industries. And they are part of non-executive directors, bringing that knowledge. And their task is to bridge the gaps. We have a shortage. We have, some idea, gaps. We need them, to bridge it. So I just wanted to share this piece.
Albert, I thank you so much for sharing that. And I think it's spot on and sort of a more, how shall I say, McKinsey analysis of what we were trying to share from just our experience as part of the industry. And George, before you go on, I just want to briefly show in the camera the beautiful construction of my cigar here.
And the even burn,
thin burn line, very solid, relatively white ash. So before I lose it, I just wanted to share that with you, and we'll talk about the cigar in a second. But I'll let you.
well, so what I wanted
provide
to say was
Albert.
thank you for sharing that, number one, for a couple of reasons. But the first reason is because now we don't have to pay McKinsey consultants for that knowledge, right? Because it was extremely valuable, and somebody did pay a lot of money to hear that. But you made it beautifully concise. And the other thing is that I think progressive navigators is a great term. I don't know whether it's a better name for a modern rock band or a cigar company, you know, like progressive navigators of your curated cigar collection. I love that, and I love everything about the notion that you need some people who are aware of oversight and sort of the originators or the founders looking down on them, so they bear a sense of custodial responsibility at the same time that they are trying to foster people who really want to be original thinkers. Now, I will also make one point though about the cigar industry, and it relates to that. When you said pioneers, we don't want pioneers. I said this yesterday in a different conversation, but I said, you know what typically happens to pioneers? They're the ones that end up with a chest full of arrows. It's the guys right behind them that come through that are okay, right? So we are in a position and an industry which has traditionally, and I'm speaking historically beyond even my 50 years in the business, going back 75 years, which is a time when I've experienced and met and interacted with the people who were engaged in that interval. Being new, creative, inventive, like running out and shouting, we're going to do it this way now, or this is this is new, it's different, it's X. Those guys are gone. It doesn't work. This industry goes, thanks, really interesting, glad to hear it, there's the exit, right? No, because listen, you know, we think about this. You realize that the idea of putting cigars in cellophane was a radical idea at one time. People are like, oh, you're out of your mind. You're going to ruin the cigars. You're going to destroy the ability to mature and stuff like that. And now, you know, people look and go, are you crazy? You're shipping cigars without cellophane? Think about it. You know, they change, but as for the most part in our industry, ideas that are considered dramatically outside the box and new, really like turning the industry on its head in of the way they're thinking. They generally are like a meteor. They flash across the horizon. People pay attention. Some people may try and copy it, but then it goes away because this business has a way of coming back to the roots. And in some instances, it's understandable when you're talking about a product which is essentially agricultural and therefore dependent on, you know, let's be clear. Tobacco relies on human intervention to be at its best. It organically is. It's a gift from God, and we have it, and we're all able to enjoy it. But human intervention is what transfers it from an element of nature into something that we can all celebrate and that acts as an instrument of community for us. And by the way, that alone is one reason why we need to preserve this culture, because everything else in our lives is driving us into isolationist boxes, and every new innovation in terms of communication and technology typically succeeds in isolating us further. You know, like have your own TV, have a personal stereo, have a device on your wrist that you can communicate, all of which makes you, not us.
So George, I have a question for you. I'm a firm believer in you can't go wrong with a round cigar. What's your opinion of all these new innovators that are doing diamond-shaped cigars and octagon-shaped cigars and triangular-shaped cigars and, you know, all these funky things? What's your opinion on that?
I think it's fantastic for people who make molds and boxes to package all of that stuff. It's absolutely spectacular. And by the way, I love seeing it. I have no use for it. The truth is, listen, again, I grew up smoking, you know, Parejo cigars, cabinets, It used to be that a box press cigar was a Macanudo. That was the cigar you got. If you were in a Cuban cigar smoker, you smoked Monte Cristo. If you like box pressed, and if you like round, you were smoking Romeo or H. Upman or something like that. But box press cigars were not the norm. And now, I mean, think about it. Box press and trunk press cigars are widespread in the industry for a reason that everybody loves and enjoys. And by the way, my guess is that the vast majority of cigar smokers freely go back and forth. In other words, oh, I love Padrones, so they enjoy trunk press cigars, like they like 1926 or 1964. And there are other people who are like, I'm in love with these cabinets that Lido makes, so they like Parejo cigars that are round. I say Lido for a reason, because the single innovation in shapes and cigar making that I applaud over and over and over and over again is the chisel. That's the greatest thing that ever happened. Because, by the way, what is a cigar? This fundamental, this beautiful thing, this concoction of leaves that we can simply, use. God gave us teeth so we could bite the ends off cigars, and a match, and if we can borrow a friend's campfire, light it up, we're in business, right? And the chisel removes the necessity for any equipment. You need one match and your fingers to pinch the chisel and light up, and you're in business. It's a tremendous innovation. And by the way, it works perfectly. There are many, many, many innovations in things like this, which look great and they're really cool and people are really excited about it, but they don't do anything for the experience. I don't know what an octagonal cigar does for its smoking quality, whether it's maturing or changing or altering. Listen, I'm sure there are some people who would like to try and figure that out, and God bless, let them go forward and let somebody have a complete podcast on exotic shaped cigars. But as far as I'm concerned, like,
one aspect that I think about a lot is we all have a responsibility as part of that industry. And one, of course, lies with the manufacturers. But when we look at the two ends of the spectrum, there's the manufacturers who have a vested interest.
Wait, 1 second. Let's take a pause and say goodbye to John Doyle. Thank you for joining us today, and we look forward. Will we see you tomorrow?
John, take good care. I will. Pleasure.
Get your information. Sorry, we apologize. I did not mean to interrupt him, but that's a follower of the show that actually came to DC to come see Reinhard because he knew he would be here doing the show today.
So what I was saying is that the manufacturers on the one end, they have a vested interest. It's their business, their livelihood depends on putting out product that people will enjoy, and you have the consumer on the other end of the spectrum who is eager to experience all of that. But then you have a responsibility in the middle of people taking a more neutral stance and a stance of independence, in the sense that the retailers are curating an experience and taking a responsibility in educating and guiding the consumer, as well as the media. And those two entities have a tremendous importance in terms of keeping things in line, or at least, separating out the bullshit a little bit and giving everybody,
I think it's
certain
clear
guidelines and rails.
that there's retailers need to snatch back some authority that they have lost in terms of how they guide cigar consumers in general. How successful they're going to be able to do that in this era when social media and all these websites proliferate in that is up for debate, and I guess we'll see what the outcome is. But here's my point. Retailers need to be more proactive in how they advise, essentially how they curate their customer base by virtue of the way that they curate their retail offerings. They need to be advocates. They need to be advocates for brands and their beliefs in great cigar makers, and cultivate awareness of that amongst their customer base. And at the same time, The window that's there for people in the cigar media is to be the adjudicators of truth. They need to be, there's not enough of this proliferation of cigar media is a lot of rah-rah and a lot of hoo-ha. It's not, these people are not building fan bases because they're truth tellers. They're building it because they're really good regurgitators of press releases and PR bullshit written by interns that don't know one end of a cigar from the other. But they're glib and they're good with an image. And so, okay, fine. And those people, listen, there's always sheep to be let off the cliff, and we're not gonna be able to stop that. But responsible retailers should be focused on being better, more forward about their opinions about the greats in the industry, why you should pay attention to what they do. And the cigar media should be better at shooting down the PR double talk and the useless trivia that is offered as like masquerading as useful information to consumers. And the faster that consumers recognize, okay, this guy knows what he's talking about and he's telling the truth, and other people embrace that to say, yeah, that's a reliable person to get judgment from. Now, listen, my taste, there are plenty of things that Reinhard and I could probably disagree on about, particular cigars or the things that we might choose to eat or drink with them, because that's the universe. But we can both exercise good judgment about the quality of the product, how it was made, how it's presented, and how authentic its price proposition is, how it fits into the world of that. And people should respect the ability to successfully evaluate that and transmit that information, as opposed to being people that are either regurgitators of, marketing doublespeak, instead of cutting through and saying, here's what that really means, and here's what you should take away from it, because this is what's useful for you to know.
And that I think,
George, if I
Albert, please go ahead.
Sorry, so I on consumers basis, right? So, consumers consume everything, right? Not just cigars, a lot of other products. And based on big data, working with the corporates, clients and whatnot, I always was surprised that, we always narrow down to like 8 points, system. And basically they all say that consumers' decision is based on product quality, price, and I'm just reading the list, very simple. Brand reputation, number 3, product features, reviews and recommendations, convenience as well, marketing and advertising, and then, personal preferences and values. And what surprised me always, that, a lot of old businesses, they always focus on, what the personal preference and values of a customer is. That is number one. That is number one. When in fact, human beings, when they think that they make that decision themselves, in fact, they actually make decision based on those 8 points. And surprisingly, I'm looking at this, it's based on big data. So it may not, exactly match with cigar industry, but it's matching, a lot of, consumable products. So product quality accounts for 15%, price accounts for 15%, brand reputation 15%, product features 15%, reviews and recommendations 10%, convenience 10%, marketing and advertising only 10%, and personal preference and values, that is actually, your own decision, you would think, that is only 10%. That is a bit mind-blowing, but also eye-opening, when you considering, the consumer's decision. So I agree with you on, almost everything, apart from one thing, that when you talk about the media is not covering all those 8 points. They have a chance only covering, let's put, 5 out of 8, options on that list. And that makes things, more complicated for brands and, businesses, because they assume that if I have a good product, I'm just gonna rule it. No, that's not the case. Product quality and brand reputation and product features, it's account for roughly 40%. So it's big chunk, but it's not majority.
Yeah, but you sit there and you say, yeah, that marketing isn't a big deal if it's 10%. But yet, how many times have you been in a cigar lounge and you've seen somebody come in with a copy of Cigar Aficionado in the top 25 and say, I want this, and this.
Well, that
Or
falls
you-
within reviews and recommendations.
Mhm.
That falls within review and recommendations, category. So,
How-
marketing can encapsulate, like I said, marketing and advertising. If we split the marketing, away from that, marketing alone can cover, 4 categories out of 8.
I was just about to say, Albert, I think where this is probably where we need to look at it maybe slightly differently is that all of the aspects that you mentioned, and rightfully so, they're all heavily influenced by marketing and communication from the manufacturers, and of course also how information is being transmitted through, in our case, cigar media. And I think one of the challenges that we see in all the industries and in our time in general is that journalism has lost a lot of its integrity and foundation as a neutral and independent force trying to separate facts from the BS, because people are not used to making their own research anymore. A single Facebook post can change people's perception and their lives, but there might be nothing behind it, right? So with our shortened attention span, with information being so readily available and everybody having a voice, being a voice, and being some sort of an influencer today through social media, the overwhelming amount of information, and a lot of that on the verge of being questionable, makes it so challenging for people to differentiate between solid, well-researched information and, as you said, just utter marketing BS.
PR doublespeak. There's a
PR
lot of
doublespeak.
people masquerading as journalists today. They
Amen.
don't have the skill, they don't have the training, they don't have a professional background that says
Digital creators, we call them digital creators. They're not journalists. They don't know, how to do investigations. They don't know how to, find the primary sources. They're digital creators, and they call themselves, journalists.
Another very important point, I think, is a certain code of ethics that used to be at the core of journalism, but is just non-existent in our current environment.
because you can't earn a living that way anymore. And think about it. So enrollment in journalism school is way down, because people say, what do I need to go to J school for and rack up bills when I could just take my camera out on the street and spew crap into the microphone and sell it to a local news station? And everybody else is willing to buy and absorb that material without questioning what they're being presented. It's not there's no critical analysis. There's zero real skilled evaluation present in any of that. So we all suffer as a result. And what I'm saying is we're swimming in an ocean of disinformation, which is being shoved at us as authoritative because of association with one platform or another that people agree to embrace. It doesn't have anything to do. The one saving grace, I believe, is that in order to be a cigar lover, in order to be somebody who actually actively enjoys smoking a cigar, you have to be a little bit of a contrarian, which means by your nature, you are doubting the things that people are telling you. Right? In other words, you don't believe everybody's saying, "Oh my God, that's bad for you," and everything else. So that's a saving grace for cigar smokers.
Professional hobbyist, that's another terminology. I'm sorry, I'm just throwing them left and right, but that is a professional hobbyist. They question things. They look for better sources. They look, for root, causes of why is happening these things with the hobby I love. And the general consumers, they have a lot of biases, and those biases are formed by media. And I don't know how cigar brands going to respond, but the challenge is that you could see a lot of small businesses actually away from cigar industry, but a lot of small businesses away from cigar industry, they would go in, spend a lot of money on influencers marketing, and then get actually that business propelled. The question is, how long is going to last? So the moment that, agreement with the influencer is going to, end, how long we going to, actually go out, and still continue that business? That business continuity becomes a question. It has to be, well thought and built block by block. So if a brand is just chasing, what's modern, those pioneer technologies, pioneer people, it's not long term. It is not long term, approach.
Well, you look at it like
Kind
this.
of customer. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, I was going to say back in the day, and I know that George will remember these days too. Before we had Facebook and MySpace was still popular and all that, we had forums. And on the forums, you had more cigar smokers on the forums, and they were real cigar smokers, and you could listen to what they had to say. And it was a lot more trustworthy than all these influencers on Facebook and MySpace back then and Instagram. Because
professional hobbyists, that's what foundation of the forums was, professional hobbyists that exactly died to the cause, to the root, and some of them probably knew industry better than some manufacturers themselves. Absolutely.
But we had a lot of owners of cigar companies that were members of Cigar Pass, and Cigar Pass was a great forum. And it's still in existence today. I still check in with them from time to time because you had people who, like you said, they were hobbyists, but they knew what they liked. It's just like you get people today, they go, well, what's the filler of this and that and the other thing? And I always tell people the only two things you really need to know about a cigar is you either like it or you don't like it. You can't go and say, just because so-and-so said it's great, it's going to be a great cigar. Okay, it's all about going to the shops and experimenting and trying things and doing samplers and things like that. And going to parties. I know George will probably remember Gary Pesh had his 35th anniversary. We did that big party. You were there.
That's right.
And you had all the owners. And it was different because back then you could talk to them and find out that owners are just people as well as the people who are smoking cigars. They're lovers of tobacco. And you could actually talk to them about cigars. What do you like? What don't you like? And as a matter of fact, I'll tell you, at Gary Pesh's 35th, it was when I met Jose Blanco for the first time.
Yeah.
And Jose Blanco looked at me and I had a tube in my pocket from back then he was with La Aurora.
Aurora, exactly.
Yeah. And I had the green tube from Cameroon in my pocket. He said, you can get the same cigar without the tube for $10 less. It's you got to talk to the people who smoke cigars, not just the people who think they want to learn, who just want to smoke cigars. Because I listen to people on Zoom, and not this particular one, but other Zooms that I've been on. And all of a sudden they've discovered a new cigar. And because people like that person, all of a sudden everybody wants to buy that cigar. And it doesn't necessarily make it a good cigar. So I'm like anti-influencers. I want to talk to the people who are really smoking cigars. That's what I like about this group. It's cigar smokers, it's people in the industry. And I've had the pleasure of meeting people in this group. And I've met people like Reinhard in person and things like that. And, basically it's a hug, how you been, how's the family, yada, yada, yada. It's not about, well, what tobaccos are you using this week in your cigar? And I just prefer that method. That's just me, but.
Yeah, but you're not, I think that's very representative of a particular generation. Don't forget that we started all this conversation with Reinhard identifying that there are really 3 generations right now that are tending to overlap, and the question is going to be going forward as we transition, what will prevail in terms of the general attitude about who's worth listening to. I will say this, I think in the realm of consumer goods in particular, and that includes, food and drink, people who chase the followers of digital influencers are on a fool's errand, for the simple reason that those people are obsessed with doing what looks good on Instagram and TikTok right now. And it doesn't matter whether they're excited about you this week, because next week they're going to be excited about somebody else. And you don't build a brand foundation on that. And your point about forums, the thing that's different from then to now is that there were a select group of forums, and they hadn't proliferated like mushrooms after a rainstorm. And so you could sort of pop in and out of 2 or 3 and find the one where you felt comfortable, both by the nature of the conversation that was, in other words, how respectful people were to each other, but also how posters had the ring of authority about what they were telling you, and it wasn't commercial claptrap. Now there are so many sources, it would take days, if not weeks or months, to sort through all of the different options, and you don't have that many hours to find out where you naturally fit in. So people just sort of skim across the top, and all they're doing is paying attention to the surface. And a lot of times what that means is that there's this tenuous consensus that exists for a couple of weeks because something is hot. And hey, listen, everybody loves that new octagonal cigar that they made, or everybody loves this new wrapper. And so for 5 or 6 or 8 weeks, that's a topic of conversation that everybody hovers around, that it's there. And all kinds of people who might be dipping in on a relatively new, as a younger entrant into all of that goes, oh, well, this is the thing to get and to learn about right now. And it's completely misguided because it could be totally wrong for them. That's the other thing that happened when you were talking with cigar makers. By the way, just so you know, Reinhard had an opportunity to smoke one of those La Gloria Cubanas that Ernesto made for Gary Pesch's 35th. You remember that?
Nice. Yeah.
He smoked one yesterday, still brilliant because a great cigar maker made it. But the thing is, Jose Blanco, Lido, Ernesto, those guys,
Benji.
they would meet people in the back in the day when you would, because there were, you remember this really well, there were limited opportunities for the average consumer to actually bump up against a real cigar maker, the legends of the industry. More likely you would meet their representatives who were, around the country. But when you met those guys, they didn't ask you, by the way, do you like San Andres tobacco? Do you like Sumatra raised in Ecuador or Vietnam, or some bullshit? In other words, they don't do that. They'd say, what's going on? How do you like that cigar you're smoking now? When do you normally smoke? And by the way, do you drink whiskey or beer? And is your wife blonde or brunette? Something like that. They have these conversations, and they get to know you, and then your conversation flows, and you have an organic way of embracing what they're telling you. Now, it is true that if you decide that you really like that person, you're going to listen to them in a way that when you met this guy and, oh, he's a cigar big shot, but the guy was an asshole, you go, fuck him and fuck his cigar, right?
I would like to offer one
On that note,
train of thought.
Reinhard, I just gonna say something that, we talked about, previously. So, digital marketing and digital, age, what it created, immediate sale point. And that is wrong. An equivalent would be in traditional family that you meet a girl and you don't ask her immediately to marry you. You just met her. That's not going to work. That's not going to happen. She's going to say, weirdo, move on. So you obviously have to, go on a date, you have to, learn about each other. It's a process. And the, digital age, ignore that for past, at least 10 years. Some companies, realized that, some companies didn't. And, whenever you send a brand ambassador and, they're not educated that they don't need to sell, their job is not to sell. Their job is to educate, to actually befriend, to warm them up, to, be a, marriage counselor. That's their job. And that's, I think, one of the aspects that, we're dealing with, that, people just jumping and they, it's my, Tinder, meet. And then, that was awful. That's exactly what digital age, did.
And I wanted to offer one other thought, and that is, I think we as a society have somehow lost ability to have candid conversations, but without necessarily always trying to be right in everything that we say. And I think the perfect expression of that is the modern day algorithms that we see in all forms of social media, which essentially just form a bubble. And with every interaction, with every posting, with every picture, we just dive deeper into the bubble that is presenting us a preconceived notion and an opinion that we have already formulated for ourselves, and we're just diving into that. And what we need is to take a step back and just look at things with a more 30,000 feet perspective and treasure other people's opinion, especially when they differ with yours, and say, George might have a point there. And even though it's not necessarily my own opinion, there's a lot of value in that to be gained. And that's what takes us further, instead of just entitling us even more to our own bullshit. And that sort of brings me back to our blind tasting evaluation yet again, where I think the point of reviews online is not to give everybody colorful descriptions of what the cigar is smelling and tasting like, because that is highly subjective based on our previous experiences and our individual sensorium. But there are certain undeniable facts as to whether cigars are properly constructed. Is the draw and the combustion all right? And that's what I wanted to discuss with you regarding the cigar that we both are experiencing. Yes. Instead of just trying to tell you, well, it tastes like, what did we say yesterday? It tastes like
it tasted like the sandstone from a Mongolian riverbed on the east side of the stream, in spring instead of winter. All these different, listen, that's, what that is one consequence of cigar media, which is understandable to a degree. Anytime that you are trying to develop and encourage a level of connoisseurship around the appreciation and the understanding of a given product, especially one that is agricultural like this, you need to develop some vocabulary. Absolutely. In order for people to be able to not only exchange information, but to understand each other's opinions and reach some degree of consensus, at least some ground. Okay, I understand what you were tasting, but I got this, and how does that fit together? I applaud the idea that people are trying to find new ways to make associative descriptions of the taste, the actual tastes and palate sensations that they're getting. But what I debate is the usefulness of trying to, I tasted black cherry or something like that. Because by the way, every time I do that, I was like, okay, so how do you know about black cherries? Do you live someplace near a forest and you go pick black cherries, or are you talking about black cherry like the, cough drops or something like that? In other words, is it something that you're talking about that has an organic flavor that you experience and understand, or is it some synthetic iteration of that, like the fucking flavorings you ask them to put in your milkshake at Starbucks, right? No, we need to be addressing the actual properties of the components, how they perform. So again, with a cigar, does it look good? Does it feel good? Does it satisfy your taste buds? But also, does it perform? Does it stay lit? Does it burn right? Does it get too hot? Does it get too bitter? Does it get too sour? Those are all useful things to conclude.
Yep.
We can use this as a prime example. I mean, how's the cigar treating you so far?
I'm talking too much, so it keeps going out, and that's nothing new to, these guys all know. They're sitting there saying, yeah, I'm happily smoking my cigar. Well, but I think that this cigar has, I would place it on the just under my medium spectrum. It's a relatively mild cigar. I think it's beautifully made. Yours has burned. It has behaved absolutely perfectly.
Impeccably.
It's like a star student in the, but also maybe not one that is always screaming me, like at the front with the answers. It's just there, and it's giving you, you're able to take from it what you want. So it's a well-behaved cigar. It's well made. It has pleasant but very innocuous aromas. This is not an aggressive cigar at all. There's no big body. There's no earthiness. This is not a cigar that is striving for this bold path. This is not a unique blend.
However,
Gentlemen, are you at Reinhard, both and George, are you at the stage where you can try to guess the brand, you guess the blend?
I would like to hold off for a second with that question, because it's not exactly the point that we're trying to get to.
Right.
But we wanted to
Okay.
just do our experience and share with you what we're perceiving, and then in the end we will reveal. We'll ask Tony to tell us what we're smoking. But what surprised me is that I completely agree with you. We're somewhere in that mild to medium spectrum in terms of strength. However, the cigar to me offers a luscious and velvety mouthfeel. So there's a creamy aspect to it. There's a certain unctuousness in terms of
There's
how,
a good weight to the smoke.
absolutely, and I find that interesting, because in the beginning we were both saying that the cigar felt light
Right.
in our hand,
Yes.
subdued in terms of the pre-light experience, but here it is offering a certain richness, at least in texture, and how the individual aromas and also the sensations in the palate are being delivered. And I very much enjoy that. So I find this to be a very harmonious cigar,
Yes.
in that it
Agreed.
offers a compact body with aspects of creaminess to it, a certain nutty, woody core that sort of keeps all the things together. And then you have these very light and very delicate notes dancing around it, with a light citrusy whiff every now and then, without
But
being
very-
very pronounced.
Very occasional, not
just a
forward
little-
at all.
A
Yeah.
little zing here and there to sort of keep you engaged. And it's not that the cigar is boring by any means. It's not the most surprising thing in that it sparks all these fireworks every other second. So it has that very well behaved, very clear and concise path with that unctuous core, and just enough to keep you engaged and to keep you excited whilst we progress in the cigar experience.
Yeah, it's not boring. You don't want to put it down. Again, it's beautifully made. It hasn't gotten too far removed from the flavors that it presented as we started, which is important in this particular instance. I think for the kind of personality cigar that it is, it was essentially mostly gentle and creamy and a little bit flavorful with some bright, mostly, I think, herbal qualities, not necessarily floral, not hothouse or anything like that. So let me ask you this. As country of origin, would you say Dominican Republic?
It certainly doesn't present itself like a modern day rendition of the bold, peppery Nicaraguan powerhouse. I would definitely say yes. This to me feels like a well-made Dominican cigar.
Balanced, elegant, a degree of complexity, but not aggressively forward.
Does it remind you of anything that you have had in the past, or are there certain notes that would point towards individual components in the blend?
Yeah, it's reminiscent. It's tickling my taste bud memory. Interestingly enough, different from what you have been experiencing at the stage where you are right now. There is a sour note that has come into mind. If you look right here, that is very intriguing, and I don't mean that in a negative way. I'm saying it like, the balance of sweet and sour. There's a sour element to this, which is a contrast to the typical aggressive, like, tobacco sweetness that a lot of people go for. That is making for a transition here, and it's unusual. It's actually what it comes down to is that even though it hasn't increased substantially in power at this point, well past the halfway, its complexity has deepened. There's a new element forming right now, and actually it's at this moment in my experience where I'm smoking it now, having relit after running my mouth all this time, it's becoming a different cigar. And that's very engaging to me. That's what I like. I want a story. I want an adventure with my cigar. I want it to begin one way and end something different, not necessarily unrelated. I don't want them to be, a flavor that drives off a cliff and the second half is no fun, or I don't want it to be, becoming unnecessarily aggressive as it finishes, with too much oil and too much tar and too much power.
To me, where I'm at right now, it has that very condensed build up towards the end, where exactly as you described, there is a concentration of the experience to offer it more richness and depth. And I agree. You remember I said there are certain citrusy highlights, refreshing elements that beautifully translate into that.
So that's
slightly
acidic. There is a
acidic
sour
component.
There's a little tongue grip in this. There's a little palate
Which
sensation.
for me creates that
salivation?
constant salivation, which is also means of the creaminess of the cigar, because it just creates that mouth filling sensation that nicely plays with that very focused core.
What
and
you're
gives it an
describing
extra-
is exactly how Henke Kellner likes to build a cigar. That's the old Davidoff formula
the
of
stimulation of the palate
yes,
on a holistic.
on the whole, exactly, like mapping out all of your buds and what will happen as you smoke the cigar.
Even though it doesn't have that typical Davidoff muskiness with the mushroomy, gamey quality that we also discussed yesterday. So it certainly doesn't strike me like a typical white label, for example. We had one question earlier in the chat, which I briefly wanted to hear your opinion on, and that was regarding the storage and aging of cigars in a traditional humidor as opposed to coolidors, which have become quite popular. And somebody wrote in the chat that you might have an opinionated
Look,
thought on this.
if you are using a coolidor, it better be a big one that you are humidifying almost scientifically by keeping all of your cigars in their original boxes. That is the only reason to use something like that, because and remember this, there is a limit to which those cigars should be in that environment. At a certain point, and this depends on the cigar, see your local tobacconist for advice about this, but there's a limit at which it needs to come out of the box, maybe out of its cellophane or out of any other packaging material and go into a proper humidor, like a Daniel Marshall, like an LA Blue, like a Davidoff, depending upon your philosophy in terms of how much you want the cob of your humidor to influence the further maturation. But to my way of thinking, the cigars need to spend the majority of their maturing time in cedar. Now, if the manufacturer shipped their cigars in a proper cedar box, whether it's decorated or painted or paper covered on the outside is irrelevant as long as the interior actually is cedar, then you can rest those cigars for years in a cooler door, provided that you are properly offering the level of humidification that it required to keep those boxes as well. And it needs to be active because you need to be, aging of cigars requires constancy of the environment. You can't have the roller coaster of either temperature or humidity. So again, keeping cigars in boxes for a period of time in a properly humidified cabinet of any kind, whether it's a cooler door or some other piece of furniture, is all very well and good. But when it comes time to get to where you are actually going to enjoy the cigar, in other words, once it goes into your on-deck circle of cigars that you're going to enjoy, it needs to go in a proper desktop unit, as I said, by a very small number of people in this world who make great humidors. And that period of time, whether it's 6 weeks or 6 months or a year, but any in that range, depending upon the cigar and how fast you have removed it from its box, that will make all the difference in whether or not all of your aging time was worthwhile. Like, so for instance, you can keep a cigar too long, or you can take it out of sleep mode too soon. Both of those things are sins where you are doing a disservice to the original manufacturer's intent. Cigars have a natural lifespan. There's a point at which they cease becoming more complex and more complete in terms of the original blend's expression and start to go down a hill. For the vast majority of cigars that are made today, that time comes, I think, somewhere between 5 and 7 years. After that, it starts to go aggressively downhill. You're losing a lot of the properties of the cigar itself. In other words, the inherent properties, because you're losing a percentage of the oil. Having said that, there are marvelous cigars in the market today that you can keep for 10, 15, 20 years, as we experienced yesterday, but they need to be cigars that were built for that as well. The problem with today's consumer is they rely on somebody's review on social media to say, oh, you got to have this cigar now, and they rush out to the cigar store and light it up, and they don't realize that what they're committing is cigar infanticide. They're destroying something which could be an extraordinary experience if they had the patience to wait for it to come to them. And then they go, I don't care. This is not a good cigar. They don't know what they're talking about because they lit it under the wrong circumstances.
And before the cigar reaches its final potential,
yes,
it's on to the next limited edition.
yes, exactly.
The next
new flashy,
shiny image, exactly. George, I think we've reached that point in our discussion and in our smoking experience where I will try to get Tony to reveal what we're experiencing.
I'm gonna go get him, man.
But I stay with me for a second because I would love to hear your final thoughts, and maybe we can give everybody a final sort of rundown of what we're experiencing. And again, the whole purpose of this is really not to sit here and guess, oh, this is a I don't know, underground Connecticut shade, or it's this and that, or La Aurora.
Gentlemen, you haven't shared what is on retrohale. I was like waiting and waiting and I'm sorry for interruption. What is on retrohale? You guys talked about cigar flavors, but you've been smoking. I haven't captured that moment when you did the retrohale.
We've both been retrohaling. I want you to give us the reveal in a minute. We've both been retrohaling as we smoke, and believe it or not, it's very gentle. It is not spicy and peppery. You know how
Wow.
a
Okay.
lot of times a retrohale is like this, you know, the rake going through your sinuses going, oh yeah, you're smoking great tobacco now, you know. And you might as well be snorting red pepper flakes. But this is very, very gentle. It's soft. It's not quite powdery or talky, but it's very good. What I said was it's a very complete, it keeps us salivating. It's gotten more complex as we smoke. I said it's a lot like how Henke used to build Davidoff cigars.
Yeah.
Just out of interest, gentlemen, just out of interest, before you get to the reveal, from an age perspective, do you guys have a guess on age? Are you able to taste anything, especially with what you just described there in terms of the retro? Do you have any guesses as to whether it's something a bit more on the age side or something?
Well, I think there's two sides to the answer here, Mace, and the first one is the age of the tobaccos used for the cigar in the first place. It doesn't necessarily strike me like very old, extremely mature tobacco. So there's a certain vibrance and a certain youthfulness to the tobacco. However, at the point where it's clearly obvious to me that this is beautifully fermented
It was well fermented.
tobacco that was
Properly blended,
Properly
properly aged, properly rested, and properly blended. So it's performing like a mature cigar. It's clearly not something that was either rushed in terms of the construction, with the packaging, or the presentation, but it's not we're not talking about a 5 or 6 year old cigar. Look, what I'm surprised at is that it has continued, even where I am here, to deliver really unique flavors that are a far stretch removed from what we started out with without being off the reservation.
very true. And I also agree that the retrohale in particular offers a very pleasant add-on, so it's an extra layer to the overall experience, without being harsh, without any aggressiveness, beautiful texture, and just what you would wish for in terms of the retrohale, to provide an extra layer and to give the cigar a bit more oomph and a more holistic sensation overall, but in a very well-behaved manner overall.
Almost sounds like a Winston Churchill, the way you're describing it.
Yeah, you mean a Davidoff Winston Churchill, the new?
Yeah. Just by the way you're describing it, that's what it sounds like, because that's kind of the experience I had with the Winston Churchill white label.
I was about to say that, a lot of people, in comments said different opinions, Aladino and whatnot. I was, as a Davidoff fan, I was like leaning towards Davidoff as well.
Could be an Avo.
Yeah, Henke's son used to blend and get a little bit of sour notes in his stuff too.
Yeah, maybe with some deliberate intent, right? In other words, there was a desire to create some, let's not say challenging, but some original flavors that were distinctive, that had properties beyond the simple. When you get complexity built into a blend, and you're sitting there sort of smacking your lips at the end going, wow. And even at this stage of the cigar where I am right now, new flavors are entering the conversation. That's an accomplishment. That's something that's really, really beautiful.
One final question, George. Going back to what we discussed earlier in terms of different generations and some different moments in time of the industry, does this cigar strike you more like a very old school blend?
It's an old-fashioned cigar.
Or a more contemporary expression?
My take is that, sir, my take is that it is a much more traditional blend. It is more about balance. It's more about a little degree of depth than sort of unchallenging is the wrong way to say it, but not aggressive. This is not a modern style cigar that is showing off either really bold Nicaraguan tobaccos or heavy Honduran Corojo, things like that. Should we ask
Tony,
Tony?
do you have a second for us, or do you have the ring on you of
Do
the
you have the
cigar?
bands for the cigars?
I like often, I'll tell you.
Give us the reveal and let us know. And thank you very much,
Tony,
Absolutely.
Tony decided to
Everybody.
curate our blind smoking experience today.
So in honor of Pro Cigar Festival this week, I have decided to give them a curveball. We went with the La Flor Dominicana Reserva Original.
Yeah, which is a
Yeah.
real throwback cigar.
Hi, who called? Hello,
Yeah.
signed photo, get you the address, thank you.
Interesting, great experience. Excellent cigar, and I think everything you said and everything we shared sort of makes sense in light of what Tony just told us.
Well, in particular, this blend, which goes back to the earliest days of Lito's cigar making in the Dominican Republic.
George, what a wonderful experience.
Well, yeah, it
It's
was
been
great.
an absolute privilege and
Thank
pleasure.
all of you guys for your input, because today's conversation was a dynamic. It was about all of you guys sparking us. So I really appreciate it. I love it. And I hope at least some of you can tune into to Jay's podcast tomorrow night, so you'll get a sense of how we're going through our tasting, our guided tasting tomorrow. I'm really looking forward to it.
Can you
It's gonna
share
be great.
the name of the podcast again, please, for everybody interested?
It's called Ono Live exclamation point coffee and cigars. And typically, I believe when it actually is live, it's on Facebook. Later on, it appears on YouTube as well, so you could watch the version afterwards and speed through it at your content. But when it's occurring, it's on his Facebook platform. And it's for Ono Coffee. His name is Jay Caragay, Caragay.
I'm sure Reinhard can share that and light them up, channels, and people will tune in.
Yeah,
Definitely.
we actually look for that. What we'll do is get Jay to send a link.
Absolutely. What an experience. George, thank you so much for taking the time and joining us.
It was my
today.
pleasure. It was great to have you here. I loved it. You'll forgive us for the back and forth that's here, but we're in a store and it's a nice retail day. Lots going on. But it was really great to share it with all of you. And through the magic of Zoom, we're a great community, but we should be looking for the day when we can all do this together in the same room.
Amen. Live from Capital Cigar and Tobacco here in Bethesda, Maryland. If you happen to be in the area, join us tomorrow for our wonderful Maryland cigar tasting experience. And anytime thereafter, if you happen to be around, stop by Capital Cigar. And thanks everybody for joining us today. The very best to all of you. Have a wonderful Wednesday, and we'll see you all next week. Same time, same station. Until then, light them up. Goodbye, everybody.
Peace out.
Wish I could be there.
Yeah, there
Take
you go.
care.
Thanks so much, Reinhard. Thanks.